Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Joe Biggs here with Infowars.com. Now, what I want to talk about is one of the most popular topics right now on the internet, and it's been censored and removed from many different sites. It's Pizzagate. Now, Pizzagate it's a very difficult subject matter to go into. What Pizzagate is a group of people who eventually decided that there was a connection to the John Podesta emails that were released by WikiLeaks and somehow pedophile lingo and handkerchief lingo, because they uncovered these really kind of creepy and, quite frankly, very odd emails. Now, does that mean that they are involved in pedophilia? Does that mean that they're involved in these acts? We don't have enough proof to say that whatsoever. At the end of the day, you have to be very careful when covering something like this, because if there is no connection to that, and this is all just speculation, because at the end of the day, when you look for something hard enough, you will eventually see what it is you're looking for. You could be sued. So the biggest thing to do is, let's not focus so much on the Comet ping pong and all this. Let's actually look at what Pizzagate really is. And that is the fact that child pedophile rings do exist. That there are adult human beings who go out and commit heinous acts on these young children. They get them addicted to drugs. They pawn them off. Human trafficking. All kinds of sexual acts that are just unspeakable and inhumane. And that stuff does exist. There was a place called Dojo Pizza that was running for quite some time. And the FBI raided that spot and found that there were underage women that were being used there, under the ages of 17. And later on, they ended up busting the guy that owned that spot for child pornography. So these places do exist. So we have to start focusing on the things that we've proven, the things that we can show people that this truly does exist, while kind of talking about, hey, this could be linked to something else. That's probably the best way to go around it. But what we do know is that it does exist, and there is proof of that over years of research and different raids and arrests and things like that. We know that John Podesta has hung out with some very interesting individuals that we've seen these people that have hung out with Jeffrey Epstein. The Clintons have been there. They've been to the pedo island before. These are things that we can factually prove. So instead of just getting one-sided, just kind of not even looking anywhere else and having your blinders up and staring at one thing, let's just focus on what we can prove. And what we can prove is that there are actual pedophile rings that exist. Now, I did a video a few months back of something that's kind of related to this. Joe Biggs here with Infowars.com. Now, last week an article came out in the Daily Mail titled "Decorated Green Beret is Kicked Out of U.S. Army Special Forces After Shoving Afghan Police Commander Who Raped Boy Who Was 12 Years Old and Then Beat Up His Mother When She Reported the Crime to Higher-Ups." And now you have a decorated soldier who was with the U.S. Army Special Forces for 11 years. He is now being kicked out after he stood up for a young rape victim and his mother who were beaten by this rogue police commander. Now, word got out to Sergeant First Class Martland that one of the police commanders that he had trained had sexually assaulted a boy and hit his mother. And he decided to take action. There was a squabble between him and the commander, and he shoved this guy to the ground. Now, this Afghan police commander left with only bruises, nothing really serious, and the Army saw fit to essentially remove him from his position in Afghanistan, put him at a desk job for a while, and then send him back home, where now they have involuntarily discharged him from the Army. Now, there's a lot of people in the operator community, special forces, higher-ups, and politicians who think this is a disgrace and want to hail this Sergeant First Class Martland as a hero, which he should be, because there is a rape culture going on in Afghanistan. I myself have witnessed that type of things when I was deployed in Afghanistan. We used to call it Man Love Thursday, where you would see and hear just some of the most god-awful things that will never leave your mind. Now, you didn't see the actual stuff, but you could see a grown man
holding a younger boy's hand, and you know that they weren't father and son, that there was something going on. Now, the Washington Examiner reported on the invading troops' struggle with the constant displays of affection towards young boys, as well as glaring evidence of underage homosexual activity. I know Marines and soldiers who have refused to work with Afghan military or police, said one U.S. military official who spoke to the Examiner anonymously. It's not about homosexuality as much as it is about the young boys. Some of them like to show pictures on their cell phone. That should be illegal. Some of the Afghans have their own young boys they use for sexual purpose, and we can't do anything about it. Now, the situation is particularly troublesome because the people committing the abuse are the people working with coalition forces. In other words, these are the people the coalition funds. We in the West are working with people who rape children in order to throw out the people who prevented this practice. Now, during the Taliban rule of the region from 1996 until late 2001, under Mullah Omar, bachabazi was driven from the social norm and outlawed as a transgression against humanity and Allah. A zero-tolerance ban on sodomy and all forms of homosexuality, bachabazi chief among these, was enforced throughout the region with martial capital and lethal strength. The Taliban's parameters drew from a pre-Islamic Pashtun code as well as a rigid strain of Wahhabi doctrines. This new governance brought with it an emphasis on eliminating immoral vices. Now, any traces of these sexual tendencies or relations between males was met with a swift death sentence. Yet following the overthrow of the Taliban, the practice immediately began again. That leads to the rather sad irony that the very war being fought to liberate Afghans from abuse under the Taliban fueled the abuse of Afghan boys. But like I said, that's something that I've personally seen and been aware of, and it's disgusting. And the weird thing is, the problem is, I don't know anything about this Sergeant First Class Charles Martland whatsoever. He could be a good guy. He could be a bad guy. Maybe he has a series of in the past where he snapped or not, or he could be the greatest guy in the world. Really, this man, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry that he's being kicked out, but there's a bigger story here than just this operator who is being kicked out for stopping this rape. Now, there's a huge rape culture in Afghanistan. Afghanistan has the most pedophilia per capita in all of Asia. It's out of control. And a lot of this is caused by misinterpretation of the Quran and the way a lot of the Muslims believe that women should be completely clothed. You can only see their eyes. And you'll hear that in a lot of the stories later on where these Afghan soldiers, these men and tribes say, how can I fall in love with a woman if I can't even see her face? I can see all these boys' faces and find out which ones are good looking. And then they turn them into these, what is the term? Bachabazis. And you'll hear the times that I was in Afghanistan, you would hear some of the soldiers look at some of our guys, and the younger ones who are probably like 18 or 19 with blonde hair, they would call them cheskas, which means basically like pretty boy. And it's kind of a scary situation when you're in the middle of Afghanistan and there's not that many people around you and you're highly outnumbered by the Afghan population, and these guys are looking at you calling you Cheska. Just know that there was a few of my guys that didn't sleep too good at night knowing that they were being eyeballed, but we'll get into that. Now, Western forces fighting in southern Afghanistan had a problem. Too often, soldiers on patrol passed on an older man walking hand in hand with a young boy. Their behavior suggested he was not the boy's father, like I said earlier, times I've seen. Then British soldiers found that young Afghan men were actually trying to touch and fondle them. Military investigator Anne Maria Cardinali told me that soldiers didn't understand. All of this was disconcerting that the Defense Department hired Cardinali, a social scientist, to examine this mystery. Her report, Pashtun Sexuality, startled not even one Afghan, but Western forces were shocked and repulsed. Now, here we are, we're acting like Team America World Police, we're trying to go in and save the day, and yet we know that there's this problem going on, and we're not doing anything about it. We're going to kick a hero out, a Green Beret out, for trying to stop this pedophilia nature that's happening in Afghanistan, and we're going to let this guy who raped this boy go unpunished. And this is what's been sanctioned by the U.S. State Department. Now, this incident happened with Sergeant Martland back in 2011. Now, guess who was in charge of the State Department in 2011? None other than presidential hopeful Hillary Rodham Clinton. Now, she is the reason that this soldier is essentially being punished. Now we have the documents that Judicial Watch first reported on back in 2011, but it says here in March of 2014, the U.S. State Department acknowledged the centuries-old practice had become a problem, yet that followed the Obama administration issuing a new Army manual telling troops not to judge Afghan social customs, such as the practice of bacha bazi. And let's go back to the Judicial Watch report of December 11, 2012. New Army manual orders soldiers not to criticize Taliban. Now, this is a strong indicator that the Obama administration's crusade to appease Islam has gone too far. The draft leaked to the newspaper offers a list of taboo conversation topics that soldiers should avoid, including making derogatory comments about the Taliban, advocating women's rights, any criticism of pedophilia, directing any criticism towards Afghans, mentioning homosexuality and homosexual conduct, or anything related to Islam. And on top of that, we're going to go into Afghanistan and we're going to protect opium fields, and we're going to allow the opium growth to continue to explode. You have places like Vermont where heroin addiction's out of control, and that's all because what we're doing. The government wants you to think that we're going into these wars for good reasons. Everything that we've done in the past has led to drugs. I mean, with Dark Alliance, Gary Webb, Rick Ross.
I'm the real Rick Ross.
Today, there's a new epidemic, smokable cocaine, otherwise known as crack.
I will tell you, Director Deutsch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
The CIA used him as a pawn to sell drugs to help fund the secret war in Nicaragua.
These guys coming out and talking about how the CIA is the one that sparked the crack epidemic, that the CIA was flying these drugs in. This is something that is going on, and it's a serious matter that needs to be looked at and dealt with. You should not be punished for standing up and doing the right thing. And the fact that our country is going to discharge this soldier, this hero, and turn their back on him when he did the right thing, that shows you what's going on right now. You need to wake up, open your eyes, and see that our country is doing evil, dirty things. It's not all glamour. It's not all glitz. It's not as patriotic as you might make it out to be sometimes. Now, yes, I am a patriot. I'm a former U.S. soldier in the Army, Staff Sergeant, Roger. But at the same time, there's a lot of bad stuff going on, and I'm not going to sit back and keep my mouth shut and my eyes closed. I'm going to sit here and talk about it because it's the right thing to do, and we have to bring attention to this. I'm Joe Biggs with Infowars.com.